When people think about the fall of Rome, they imagine barbarians storming the gates, legions collapsing, or emperors poisoned in marble palaces. But that's not what killed Rome. Empires don't crumble just from outside attack. They rot from within. And one of the most corrosive forces is always money. Rome didn't just fall because of invasions or corruption. It fell because its currency collapsed. And the lessons from that collapse? They still apply to every modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Today, I'm going to show you how Rome's financial system self-destructed and why the same pattern keeps repeating throughout history, right up to today. Let's dive in. The silver standard. For centuries, Rome's economic backbone was the silver denarius. First minted around 201 BC, it was nearly pure silver, trusted across the empire and beyond. Roman soldiers were paid in it, merchants demanded it, and ordinary people stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just money, it was confidence in metal form. The empire's power and the coin's value were linked. As long as people believed in Rome, they believed in its money. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, and wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was stretched thin, defending borders against Germanic tribes, Parthians in the east, and unrest within. Tax revenues couldn't keep pace with military costs, so emperors turned to an age-old trick: debasement. The Great Debasement. Instead of taxing citizens more, always unpopular, they reduced the silver content in the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Under Emperor Augustus, who ruled at the dawn of the empire, the denarius contained about 95% silver. By the reign of Caracalla, in the early 3rd century, it had dropped to around 50%. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, in the mid-200s, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. A coin once made of solid metal had become a disc of bronze coated with silver wash. The people could see and feel the difference. Inflation followed. Prices rose because money was no longer anchored to real value. A measure of wheat that once cost a single denarius might suddenly cost dozens. This wasn't abstract economic theory. It destroyed the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to cover rising costs. Merchants stopped accepting debased coins, preferring barter or payments in gold. Local economies reverted to direct trade because the currency was no longer trusted. And the more confidence eroded, the more emperors struck cheaper coins, hoping volume would replace value. It was a vicious cycle, the same cycle that has repeated in countless inflations since. The crisis of the 3rd century. The crisis peaked during the so-called crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome suffered nearly 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell at dizzying speed, sometimes reigning only months before being assassinated. Behind the political drama was a broken financial system. Taxes were demanded in coins worth less and less. Farmers abandoned their lands rather than pay. Trade networks fractured, and the Roman government tried desperate measures, from price controls to forced labor obligations, to keep the system afloat. None of it worked. One emperor, Diocletian, tried to stop the bleeding. In 301 AD, he issued the edict on maximum prices, fixing the cost of over 1,000 goods and services, from grain to labor wages. Violators faced death. The edict was a disaster. Prices couldn't be controlled by decree when the money itself was worthless. The black market exploded, and official trade all but collapsed. People learned quickly that the law couldn't make a broken coin whole. The end of the denarius. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius altogether. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a gold coin of consistent purity, around 312 AD. It restored some stability and lasted for centuries in the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire. But by then, the Western Empire was already fatally weakened. The debasement of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. Armies could no longer be sustained. Trade networks had broken, and trust was gone. The fall of Rome wasn't a single event, but a long unraveling. Currency collapse was one of its sharpest threads. The modern echoes. It means that the destruction of money is always the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could trick its people by issuing coins that looked the same but contained less real value. Modern governments think they can do the same by printing paper, manipulating interest rates, or inflating away debts. But the outcome is always the same. The people pay the price, wealth is destroyed, and trust collapses. Weimar Germany. After World War I, Germany faced crushing reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. The government printed marks to cover its obligations, thinking it could paper over debt, just as Rome had once struck more coins. By 1923, hyperinflation was raging. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark before the war cost over 200 billion marks by the fall of that year. People carted wages home in wheelbarrows. Pensioners starved as their life savings evaporated. Money became meaningless, and the economic despair fueled political extremism that set the stage for Hitler's rise. Zimbabwe followed the same path in the early 2000s. Facing land seizures, falling production, and rising debts, the government turned to the printing press. By 2008, inflation had reached a mind-bending level, an annual rate of 89.7 sextillion%. Prices doubled every day. Shops couldn't change tags fast enough. Eventually, Zimbabwe abandoned its currency entirely, forcing citizens to trade in US dollars or South African rand. The United States. But you don't have to look only at the extremes. Even in modern developed economies, the Roman pattern lives on. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, severing the last link between currency and a tangible anchor. From that moment, the dollar became what economists call a fiat currency, backed not by gold, but by trust in government. And just as in Rome, the temptation to spend beyond means grew irresistible. Over the following decades, debt ballooned, money supply expanded, and inflation became a constant undercurrent. A dollar in 1971 could buy what takes more than $6 today. The coins look the same, the bills look the same, but the value has been hollowed out. The global danger. What makes this dangerous today is that the scale is global. Rome's collapse was an imperial crisis. Weimar's hyperinflation was national. Zimbabwe's was local. But today, the entire world runs on fiat currencies, massive debts, and central banks willing to print trillions at the first sign of crisis. That means the next collapse won't be confined to a single empire or country. It will ripple across the globe. And if history is any guide, the ones who suffer will not be the elites who hold assets, but the millions who rely on salaries, pensions, and savings denominated in increasingly fragile currencies. So what should you, as an individual, take away from Rome's currency crisis? First, understand that inflation is not an accident. It is policy. It is the silent tax that has broken empires for 2,000 years. Second, realize that real wealth is not found in paper or digits on a screen, but in assets that hold value when money does not. Land, skills, productive businesses, resources. Third, never assume stability is permanent. Romans in the 1st century would have laughed if told their coins would one day be worthless. Germans in 1913 would have scoffed at the idea of wheelbarrows full of cash. Zimbabweans in the 1980s thought their independence promised prosperity. Yet in each case, the same story unfolded. The fall of Rome reminds us that financial systems can collapse slowly, then suddenly, as trust evaporates. When money stops being real, society itself begins to unravel. Contracts fail, trade breaks down, armies dissolve, and governments lose legitimacy. The barbarians at the gate may finish the job, but the real killer is always inside the treasury. And here's the punchline. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. The Roman currency crisis wasn't just about bad emperors or greedy elites. It was about the fragility of money itself when abused by power, and that fragility has never gone away. If this gave you a new perspective, hit that subscribe button. Because history has the answers, and we're going to keep digging them up. See you in the next one.